That is the Hall of Famer Chris Carter. This is Nick Wright, and we get ready right up until 6:30.
Well, Jenna at least does. You guys, Jenna had a Sissy would put in a NASCAR team surrounding her up until 9 seconds ago. She had a table full of almonds, which are now she's sitting on her almonds. I mean, this is Freddie, my bangs. What about this? Yeah. Oh my, I'm doing an Instagram Live, America.
Yeah, how old are you, Chris?
That was asked 48 seconds ago. That is Googleable, by the way. How old is Chris
Who
Carter?
has the time? Can I have my phone back,
No,
please?
well, what are you doing? We're doing
What
a
if somebody needs to text me?
Well, oh, yeah, exactly right. Exactly right.
Anyway, good morning. Thank you for giving me a hard time, as always. Much love I have for the two of you.
Fun night of
Another
NBA playoff basketball.
stellar night of basketball last night. Let's start there. If someone told me that I had to do this entire show wearing a polycarbonate mask with googles and goggles built in, I'd say thanks, I'm good. So I want to be able to see Nick at all times, and that's not going to happen with a mask. Well, Sixers star Joel Embiid didn't love the mask, but he had no choice if he wanted to play last night in Game 3 against the Heat. He was upgraded from doubtful to no doubt before the game, went in with the mask, scored 23 points, grabbed 7 rebounds, played his first game in over 3 weeks. Looked like he didn't really miss a beat. Sixers win. They take a 2-1 series lead over Miami. At one point, Justice Winslow actually stepped on the mask. Embiid's reaction? Take a listen.
Justice stepped on it and tried to break it with his hands, but little do that know is that I have about 50 of them, so it's going to take much more than that to get me out of this series, and it's going to be a nightmare for them, too.
Telling it like it is.
Yes.
All right, so this is what we wanted to see. We wanted to see what kind of team this Philadelphia Sixers team could be with all of their firepower in it. Joel Embiid is back. It doesn't look like he was rusty at all. How dangerous could this team be with him back in the lineup?
I mean, the team that we saw last night is a team that can win a championship. Not just win the East, win a championship. That team, Embiid at nearly full strength, Ben Simmons controlling the game with the ball on a string and hitting every three-point shot imaginable, not Ben Simmons, but his teammates. That's a team with that level of defense that is as good as any team in basketball. With that said, after 3 games, the closest a series can be is 2-1. And we do a weird thing in these playoffs where every single game, after game 1, what was a lot of the questions? Is it going to be a sweep? Are teams going to get swept? Like it was.
You have to get used to this television.
Right, exactly.
It's the question is, what about the end?
Right, and so I say all that to say this. There is no real criticism of Philly from last night. The game was close through 40 minutes. It was a 2-point game going into the fourth, and then they did in the fourth quarter what they did to Miami in the entire second half of game 1, which is blow them out and make it look more lopsided than it actually was. But 2-1 after 3, with the home team having a 2-1 lead, is about where you're supposed to be. I'm not ready to anoint Philadelphia as the Eastern Conference champions. What I am ready to say is this, Chris. Their best, we talk a lot about best versus best. Philly's best is, it's not quite the Rockets and Golden State's best, but it might be the next best we have in the league right now.
And the reason why we should look at Philadelphia and talk about them is because if there was a team that said, okay, there's a dark horse team, if there's a team going to surprise people in the playoffs, before the playoffs started, Philadelphia was that team. Doing a lot of talk shows, they were getting a lot of feedback. And we didn't know what they would look like with Joel Embiid. We have to take this in consideration. The guy hadn't played an NBA game in a month. Now, this team has had great success. Now, their back was against the wall. They lost home court. But I knew that Dwayne Wade couldn't have that type of performance, franchise record, number of points off the bench. So with Joel Embiid coming back, even if they had unfortunately lost this game, I would have had a lot of confidence in him because it's him being back added to a team that has a tremendous amount of momentum. And now you can start to look at, because we were watching Philly during the season. We talked about Ben Simmons being Rookie of the Year, Joel Embiid. Oh, is he going to be able to stay healthy? We never looked at position by position how the team is put together. And now once you're into the playoffs, you can see, man, this team is dangerous. Because we saw with LeBron against the Pacers. But LeBron, as you go into the playoffs, people won't have an answer for LeBron. But if they had got to the finals against Harden or Durant and Steph Curry, they can fight firepower with firepower. The only guy in the playoffs there is no answer for is Joel Embiid. And you talk about the good team surrounding them. They got shooters. They got Ben Simmons, who's playing, I believe, the best basketball of his rookie year. Like, they are a dangerous team.
And they've got, when you talk about the complementary pieces, two of them are guys they got from the Atlanta Hawks after the trade deadline. Bellinelli and Ilyasova. They were bought out by the Hawks. They went to Philadelphia, which, by the way, was a testament to how important it was that Philly had that good January that made them, because those guys go to playoff contending teams. Philadelphia had played well enough in January. Now you look at them post-Christmas, they have the best point differential in all of basketball. They are scoring more compared to their opponent in all of basketball. And when you look at the roster, do they have a dominant big? More than any team in the league other than maybe Anthony Davis? Yes. A floor general, Ben Simmons? Yes. Amazing shooting. The guys I mentioned plus Redick? Yes. And let's not forget, since Christmas, the number 2 defense in basketball. They are right now checking all of the boxes.
With the best defensive player.
Oh, and Joel Embiid, and one of the best defensive guards in Ben Simmons.
Let's talk about Embiid for a second. Give him a little credit. The reason he was questionable for Game 3 was because you really wanted to avoid contact with his face. Well, this was a very physical game. There were 56 personal fouls combined here. He didn't take himself out of any kind of contact situation. He went right in and he attacked, and he played really well. It didn't look like he missed a beat. It looked like he fit right back into the team.
He did fit in. He fit in nice and slow. The one thing you talk about the shooters they have, one thing, they got 3 bigs that can live on the three-point line. So you talk about the style for which they want to play. Joel Embiid can be in the three-point line. We saw late in the fourth quarter, he pulled a diagonal 3 that you're not going to see a 7-footer be able to take that type of shot. So I believe they can have a special season. I believe that they're a special collection of young players. And now when you start to look at the other pieces, how they play, and I believe that their coach is really underrated also. So it's going to be interesting to see how this series goes on, how long it lasts.
And it's 2-1. It's not 3-0. The series that are done we'll talk about them later. The Pelican series is over. The Warriors series is over. They're up 3-0. We know that. The series that are 2-1 could go 6, could go 7, and the underdog could still win.
What about this one?
But this is a missed opportunity for Miami last night in this regard. They won't shoot this well from 3 the rest of the series. They won't have another 50%, 16 made threes game all series. They're down 2 headed into the 4th, and it's right there for them, and they end up getting blown out.
One thing you have to watch for too, and I'm going to be in South Florida this weekend. A young team in South Florida, they had a huge win on a Thursday night. It's so typical you can fall into it. Miami is the city is awake all night. On the Thursday night, what did the team do last night? And this weekend, because they're playing an afternoon game on Saturday. So do they take the proper amount of rest? Do they realize that game number 4 is the most important game of their careers? If they're able to do that, because I have seen teams through the years in Miami, season ticket holder, guys hanging out in Miami, even in playoff series, guys not getting the proper amount of rest. So let's watch this young team. Let's see what they do, because it can be a distraction. It's just something, as we go through the weekend, that I'm going to watch.
And you mention a young team. I have used as the comparison for Philadelphia. One of the reasons that while I think 2 months ago I said if you told me the Cavs don't make the finals, who does? I didn't say Boston. I didn't say Toronto. I said Philadelphia. But the comparison I've used is the 2010 Thunder. Harden, Russ, KD, their first year in the playoffs. They fought the eventual champion Lakers tough, end up losing in the first round. Man, I watched them last night, and I started to think maybe the better comparison is the 95 Magic. They had no experience. They had no their best players were Shaq and Penny in years 3 and 2. They didn't know what they didn't know, and they went to the NBA Finals. Sometimes talent just overrides experience. And Penny, very similar to Ben Simmons. And when you talk about there not being an answer for a big man, Shaq was the original, at least of the modern era. There's no answer for that big man.
Yeah, and also let's look who they're going against. Toronto, all their experience is bad experience. LeBron, him and Kevin Love, the only 2 that got experience. Those other guys, the experience that they had, they don't have a whole bunch of experience. So this might be the type of year that an inexperienced team can get to the finals.
Tough game for Dwayne Wade. Did anyone see a Gabrielle Union tweet last night?
No. I wonder if the previous tweet led to the tough game.
Maybe it was a little too much celebrating after that previous tweet.
You got old man legs.
Coming up, I don't know if you need him. Could Dez join Odell on the Giants? Is that even a possibility? That's next on First Things First. Day 5 of continuing Dez Bryant coverage. Where will he go? Is he still good? Will he ever get married? Earlier in the week, Dez mentioned that he'd love to stay in the NFC East and that the Giants would be a pretty good fit for him. Then yesterday, the Giants cut wide receiver Brandon Marshall. When Giants GM Dave Gettleman was asked about if he would sign Dez, he said, quote, "I'm interested in everybody." Way to narrow it down, Dave. And right after the Brandon Marshall cut was announced, this was released. Dez posting this video on the gram of he and Odell working out together. Rope day. CC, let's start with you. Do you think the Giants should sign Dez? Would Dez be a good fit on this New York Giants team, and why?
First, if Dez really looks at his career, and I believe this offseason, it can be a turning point for Dez. Number one thing, even before Dallas released him, he had looked at hiring a wide receiver coach to work on some things that could make him better as a wide receiver. Now, Odell Beckham, I'm tell you, like him, dislike him, he's one of the hardest workers I've ever seen. Now, he knows how to go about being a great wide receiver, his work ethic. One of his biggest problems with the Giants is when he's there at the Giants, they won't let him participate in a lot of the stuff on the field, the one-on-one with the defensive backs, because they don't want him to get hurt, and he really wants to be out there. That was kind of one of the things he complained about last year, why he wanted to work out on his own. So he can be a tremendous influence on Dez. I'm not saying Dez is not a hard worker, but Odell Beckham is a smart wide receiver. He knows the route tree. He concentrates on the fundamentals. He works on the fundamentals. So even though their ages are totally different, Dev's career is on the way down, OBJ is still ascending, like he can be a tremendous help. Not like Randy Moss and myself, but very, very similar. Because Randy Moss, he provided, because he was so athletic and so gifted, he provided motivation for me every day. Because if I wasn't at my absolute best, then there was someone on our team that was actually better than me. So every day I had to show up and be focused, and the commitment that we made to each other that we would challenge each other. So I believe a lot of times in a situation like this, if your ego is in check, which I believe Dez going through this whole offseason, it will be, that, yes, for the right price, he would be a good fit for the Giants.
And I appreciate the you and Randy comparison also in this regard. One of the other reasons that was a great fit, not just because one of only 3 wide receiver duos ever to end up both being Hall of Famers, but because stylistically you guys were different types of players.
Yes.
Especially very early in Randy's career. Very early in Randy's career, he was running, I mean, one of the reasons I think you didn't have as much of a problem as other people did when he said, like, he would take plays off, is Randy's running, 40, 60-yard sprints a game?
Yes.
And sometimes you got to take a break. Like, and that wasn't exactly at that point in your career what they were asking you to do, run a bunch of 9 routes.
Yeah, at no point.
At no point in your career. All right, certainly not then, and maybe at no point. And so Dez and Odell are different stylistically. There's not a lot of redundant skill sets there. And from a football version, I like it a lot. It's the same reason from a football version I liked the idea of pairing Brandon Marshall up with Odell.
Yes.
Because Dez, even at this point in his career, Dez is a better player than Brandon Marshall is at this point in Brandon's career. Brandon's older than Dez. Like, you want to go peak versus peak, it's a different discussion. But you would theoretically be getting a better version of what you had hoped to get with Brandon last year. So from a football perspective, I get it. The only reason you wouldn't have serious interest, the player wants to be there, he knows the division, for all those reasons it makes sense, is the personality part of it. And this is where I wonder if Dez is in store for a bit of a reality check. Because if Dez is telling the truth where he's not going to ask for $12, $14 million a year, if Dez is really willing to take less money, to be on a potential winner, to stay in the division, to be able to play the Cowboys twice, and he sees they cut Brandon Marshall, there's a spot for me, and the Giants still don't want him, then all of a sudden Dez is going to have to ask himself, well, wait, are Garrett's guys infiltrating the entire league? Or has some of this been more about Dez Bryant than about what other people just say about Dez Bryant?
When you talk about your relationship with Randy Moss and what you needed to bring to the table every day to be able to sustain a great working relationship on the field and a working relationship off the field. And when you say things like, I needed to bring my best and be my best every day because there was someone right there, knowing what we've seen about Dez Bryant, unless he's really changed in a dramatic way in the last couple weeks, unless this cut from the Dallas Cowboys has really resonated with him to the point where he wants to make a change, it doesn't seem like with his personality and Odell's personality, that's the relationship that they're going to have, that he's going to walk in and say, well, I've got to be 100% and I've got to make sure my off-the-field work is stellar and I have to make sure that my relationship with Odell, just knowing what you know about Dez Bryant, do you see that in him that he could be able to sort of grow into that person if he wants to fit onto this role on the team?
I believe all people can change. And most of the time, that change doesn't occur until you're forced. And this will be forced. And I believe Dez's attitude is in the right place. Also, he has a lot of respect for OBJ. He knows OBJ is better than him. When you start the day with that...
Are you sure he knows that?
He knows that. He knows that. Now, wide receivers, we all have a certain amount of crazy. So we also have a certain amount of acceptance in other wide receivers. At this point in Dez Bryant's career, you have to think about this sometime. Forget what OBJ is thinking. What do you think Washington is thinking? What do you think Howie Roseman, Philadelphia, is thinking? And the Dallas Cowboys. Would any of these teams be like, man, put Dez on the Giants. Put him with OBJ. No problem. We like to face that twice a year. And the answer would be no. Dallas does not want him with the Giants. Philadelphia definitely don't want to face Dez twice a year with OBJ and Eli. No, he doesn't want that, and Washington wouldn't want that. So I believe it can work out, even though they have some similarities in personality. But OBJ knows he is the guy. The offense will dictate. When you see the game plan on a weekly basis, you will know. OBJ also works so hard in practice that it's not like he's only a gamer. I believe he would be a tremendous influence on Dez at this point in Dez's career.
And I think you can be somewhat self-deluded as a pro athlete and still recognize the best in the field is better than me. There are a lot of guys that are, in an NBA example, like, does Damian Lillard think, you know what? Or C.J. McCollum, better example. Does he think deep down, you know what, I'm as good as Russell Westbrook? He might. But he doesn't think he's better than LeBron. Or doesn't think he's better than Kevin Durant, right? So Dez might still think, I'm still a top 10 receiver in this league. But doesn't think I'm top 2. And the point that you made at the beginning, that OBJ is better than him, this is the other reason that matters. We've never seen Dez Bryant on a team with a receiver better than him. We don't know how that would motivate him. We don't know how he would respond to the idea of, oh, I got to do work to stay with this guy. He's always, even when he was deteriorating, still better than Bryce Butler, still better than Terrence Williams, still better than Cole Beasley. So that could be good for him as well.
All right, you mentioned Damian Lillard and C.J. McCollum. We're going to talk about them coming up. Could the Pelicans challenge the Warriors in round 2? Why are we talking about that? Because the Blazers don't seem to be playing playoff basketball. That's next on First Things First. Moving on to college football, Alabama's quarterback Jalen Hurts is making headlines. Well, his father is making headlines. Hurts' dad said his son will transfer if he's not the starting quarterback. Hurts was benched in the second half of the national championship game that Alabama went on to win. Nick Saban said he had a positive meeting with Jalen's father, and Jalen has, quote, made a significant amount of improvement. Seems vague. CeCe, what would your advice to Jalen Hurts be?
This is tough because when you go to these top schools, it's what they call getting recruited over, where they recruit kids who are so good that by your sophomore, junior year, and you've had success early, you think, man, I'm getting ready to have a great career here. And then they bring in someone and recruit right over top of you who is actually a better prospect than you are. And that's what happened to Jalen at Alabama. That's what's happening in Clemson. That's what's happening at Ohio State. Ohio State might have one of their top quarterbacks transferred because they're not the starter. It's a tough situation. If he gets beat out by a true sophomore, which I believe that he will, he should transfer. He should transfer to another school. He's won the national championships. He's done all he can do at Alabama, but they've recruited over him.
And people should remember, he went to Alabama at 17. He's only 19 years old. So even if he transfers and sits out
Hadn't been redshirted.
Right. I mean, so he would have 2 years left, and nobody wants to sit behind a guy. It's amazing that both starting quarterbacks in the national championship game, Jalen Hurts and Kelly Bryant, might not be the starting quarterbacks for their team week 1 of the next year because Clemson has the #1 quarterback in the country.
Yeah, I saw him in the spring game. He looked real good.
So, I mean, I don't think anyone would blame him if Hurts went on to play somewhere else.
All right, moving on to the pros. With the draft just 6 days away, the Broncos are open for business and trades. John Elway said he's open to trading Denver's number 5 overall selection. Plenty of mock drafts had the Broncos taking a quarterback, but there might not be many options left if they trade back. CC, would this be a smart move for the Broncos?
Right now, because they do have Case Keenum there. So they do have kind of a guy, a placeholder for them. So if they decide that, you know something, maybe we'll stay with Case for a couple of years. Or maybe John Elway likes one of the quarterbacks there in the second round. Get a couple multiple picks, move out of 5, get a couple starters. This is a team that still could use an influx of talent. They got a number of question marks. They could use a young offensive lineman besides a quarterback. And if they like a guy in the second round, I could see them trading out or to the back of the first round.
I'm going to talk about them trading in the other direction, trading up to 2. I know that's not what John Elway was alluding to, but if you're telling me the Broncos are going to trade that pick, if Cleveland does select Josh Allen at number 1, and you can get the best of the non-project quarterbacks, whether you think that's Baker or Rosen or Darnold, and you only have to move up, the Giants probably open to that because they move to 5. They're either going to get Chubb or Barkley, and the Broncos would finally solidify their quarterback
I think
situation.
the price would be too high because if teams will see that Sam is there, and then I believe the asking price, yes, everyone would want to get the 2.
If you're the Giants, though, the Broncos are the only team you can trade with and still get one of those 2 stud playmakers, Barkley or Chubb. Anyone else, you're trading out of the top 5, and you're not getting that true blue chipper.
All right, finally, the NFL schedule was released yesterday, and you better get your popcorn ready. Thursday Night Football will be on Fox this season. It kicks off Week 4 with the Vikings going to L.A. to take on the Rams. The Thursday night schedule is jam-packed. Great head-to-head matchups. CeCe, how excited are you for Thursday Night Football on Fox?
Very excited that we have the deal. If you look at the overall content that we had, it makes us second to none as far as the networks out there. I think of the NFL from a packaging standpoint, we got 60% of the content here at Fox. So I'm very, very excited given how much I love the NFL. And they start off with a headbanger. Minnesota traveling to Los Angeles. Thursday Night Football in Los Angeles. We've talked about them a lot this offseason.
Yeah.
We've spent a lot of time on the Vikings. We know the type of team that they have coming back with the addition of Kirk Cousins. This is the type of game that helps to decide, man, does one of these teams have home field advantage, or is this the first of 2 matchups that we end up seeing in the NFC? Because definitely the Rams and the Vikings will be at the top.
Well, and like the first 3 weeks of this schedule, you get so Vikings at Rams you just talked about. That's in Week 4. Then Colts at Patriots. That's been basically the best rivalry in the AFC for the better part of 20 years. And Andrew Luck, I believe Andrew Luck's going to be playing football again, so we'll get to see them again. And then Eagles and the Giants, the defending Super Bowl champions and teams trying to get back at it. And I look at the back end, Panthers, Steelers. You know how much I like Cam, and the Steelers are one of the most entertaining teams in the league. We got I don't know all the machinations on how the schedule's built, but I do know as a football fan that having a big-time game on Thursday is so exciting because Fridays, to have a game that mattered the night before to talk about on Friday leading into Sunday is great. And there's a dozen of them.
Yeah, they made some huge changes with the Thursday night package, so we're very, very smart as far as getting it because now they're not all divisional matchups.
Right.
You see some cross-conference rivalries. You see that compared to what we've had the last couple years on Thursday night. They've been all divisional games, and typically it's hard to make those primetime games because you're locked into playing divisional games.
And because there's not, like Saints-Cowboys is a special game. Because Saints are only going to play Cowboys typically once every 3 years. The divisional rivalries are awesome, but you're getting that game a second time that year. So I'm excited for it. It was a good year for us to get it. It's awesome. I know the pregame show is here in New York City, which is awesome. I'm excited for it.
And 8 of the 11 Fox primetime Thursday night games have at least one playoff team from last year, which is great. Do you have the schedule with all the... Did you bring that in?
My schedule grid?
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
I've got, I don't know where it is in my stack. I got a lot of papers here, Jenna Wolf.
Just so you know,
all
it's
256
a piece
games
of paper with
lined out.
180,000 numbers on it.
This weekend,
Yeah,
I will pick the winners for all 256
That's
games.
not what I was going to say.
As I always do.
I thought you were going to memorize the whole thing.
Oh.
Just because you had
In my ear, I just got called a nerd, so I think we're supposed to move on.
With many R's.
All right, that's
nerd.
all right. I'm coming for you, Keta.
Moving
you too,
on
Jenna
to the Pelicans. You're not coming. You have to catch me first. They returned home after crushing the Blazers twice on the road, only to crush them once at home. Solid performances from Nikola Mirotic and Anthony Davis. 58 combined points. Pelicans will have an opportunity to get their first playoff sweep in franchise history. Nick Wright, I'll start with you. How have the Pelicans been able to just absolutely dominate the Portland Trail Blazers?
Well, we knew going into this series the Pelicans would have the best player on the court. But I think the expectation was the Blazers would have the next two. So it turns out the Pelicans have had the best player on the court and the second best player on the court and the third best player on the court. And when you've got the top three guys, that's how you're up 3-0. That's how you are able to dominate a series. And I was so impressed with what they did last night. Because when you take 2 games from Portland in Portland, and you know, man, we only need to win one of these home games, and we're up 3-1. Teams have come back from down 3-1, but it is exceptionally rare. To come out and in the first quarter win the basketball game, 36-20. The Pelicans won this series by 9 quarters. 2 games and a quarter, series over. Because you win game 3 to go up 3-0, it's over. They took it so seriously for a team that doesn't have a ton of experience. I know you're probably going to want to talk about the coach. Alvin Gentry's done a great job. This team has 4 above-average players. And those 4 players, Mirotic, the 2 guards, and Anthony Davis, are playing so well, their lack of depth hasn't hurt them, and they've just crushed Portland.
A number of things have happened, and if you're going to talk about them, you can talk about the Brow as far as giving out credit. You also have to talk about Gentry as the coach. When Boogie Cousins got hurt, Alvin Gentry went to his staff, and they came up with a plan. The only way we're going to be able to maintain this success that we've had is we have to change our style. And they went to a fast pace, and they were going to get up and down the court more. Also, Anthony Davis told the coaching staff and his teammates that he was going to take a page from Russell Westbrook's book when he lost Kevin Durant. So his attitude was he was going to try to dominate the game. Not only on his offensive end, defensive end, he was going to try to control the game like Westbrook. So for me, for a younger player to kind of pick up on this, for a coaching staff to be able to make adjustments, and their calling card is defense. All right? That's how they've gotten this commanding lead on Portland. Portland has not been able to get to the spots on the court. They have not been able to run their offense the way they typically run their offense. The Pelicans have made them uncomfortable, and that's how they have had this commanding lead. And, Nick, you made a great point about the first quarter with a young team, because when people think about the teams that are young, they don't look at, well, about the experience that Rondo has and some of the other players. They just look at the totality of them. So they are very, very young. For them to take command of that game in the first quarter shows a lot of maturity.
What about this Drew Holiday-Damian Lillard matchup? I don't think it's one that any of us saw coming, that they would be dominating by Drew Holiday, and all of a sudden the Blazers find themselves down 0-3.
Well, I want to talk about Lillard because he's one of my favorite players in the league. And Lillard burst onto the scene, his first playoff series ever. He shot nearly 50% from the field and hit something that is exceptionally rare in NBA history. A buzzer beater to win a series. A walk-off to win the series against Houston in round 1. Since then, that was the first round in 2014. Since then, he's played in half a dozen series. He is shooting less than 40% in those series. In this series, Damian Lillard is shooting 33%. He has been a guy that has not, post that first series of his career, we're now got a 4+ year sample size of that in the playoffs, because they're in the playoffs basically every year, where his game has not translated the way we would expect. Now, sometimes that's been because, well, the other teams, like if we stop Lillard, then we stop the Blazers. This year, McCollum's better. They have a healthy Nurkic, which they didn't have last year. He's just gotten his lunch eaten by Drew Holiday throughout this series. It's really disappointing.
And it's a bad matchup for him, because explosive as he is, he's herky-jerky off the dribble and change of pace. Drew Holiday is stronger, faster, and bigger than him. But also, Drew can play up on him, because the only team in the Western Conference that has a rim protector are the Pelicans. So it's a bad matchup for Portland because of Drew Holiday and his size. He's explosive, And if you get past him, he's got to deal with the brow before he can finish at the rim. And his shot selection just has been awful in this series. I mean, settling for too many 27, 28-footers.
And you're forgetting about Rudy Gobert. But aside from Rudy Gobert, the team
absolutely.
with the rim protector. The one other thing about the Pelicans that maybe we should have seen this coming a little bit, they're 44-26 through 70 games this year. Then they're 5-7 to finish the year. And those, I know they still got the 3 seed, but it's not like they had the 3 seed locked up. They on the final day of the season, they could have fallen all the way, I think, to the 5 line. So they limped into the playoffs to a degree. They weren't able to turn it back on to where they were. And the Pelicans playing, they now have a better winning percentage without Boogie than with Boogie, which I never would have seen coming.
Pelicans can close this out Saturday night, Game 4.
Boogie was at the game last night.
Yes, he was. He looked a little tan. I wonder if he got that in Vegas or in Southern California.
Coming up, could the Giants be making I'm going to call it a mistake, passing down a quarterback? That's next on First Things First. Welcome back to First Things First, where we shake each other's hands all the time.
Except for Jenna Wolf, who is sick and sneezing during the break.
Bit of a cold. I air 5, everybody. Air 5. Yeah. Greg Jennings, how are you?
I'm always great.
I'm not going to shake your hand because the boys said that I can't right now.
Because you're sick.
I am not sick.
It's all good, Jenna. We got it.
Oh, my God.
Oh, no, now I can't shake Greg's hand.
Literally my favorite guest of all time.
Wow.
Don't care about me.
Yeah, plus Mangini, plus Steven Jackson.
No. Right this
Plus
second,
whoever sits
Greg Jennings. All right, Greg, we are days away from the NFL draft. Everyone knows the draft will solve every team's problems in the whole wide world. For example, Giants have the number 2 overall pick. Do they continue to build around Eli Manning? Do they draft a quarterback of the future? This is the problem. Some will say the latter is the obvious choice, to which General Manager Dave Gettleman says, you can't tell me what to do.
Dave, what do you say to the idea that picking second, you have to take a quarterback because you don't want to be in this situation, ever again, essentially?
I say I want to hogwash. That when you miss on a quarterback, you've screwed you've really hurt the franchise for probably 5 years. It's a 5-year mistake. Saquon's very gifted and talented. He's one of those guys that my mother could have scouted. She could have figured that one out. With the second pick, I'm sitting at Ben and Jerry's, and I got a lot of flavors to look at.
I have to say this about Dave Gettleman. He's had a very fun offseason with quotes, and he's been very jovial and lighthearted. At some point, you wonder if he's going to, sit down and focus in and hone in and say...
I'm sure he's already done all that.
Greg, should the Giants draft Saquon Barkley? What do you think?
Yes. In my opinion, absolutely. When you look at a draft board and what Dave Gettleman is talking about, drafting, having to mandatorily grab a quarterback at number 2 is hogwash. He doesn't want to make the mistake of, and it's not so much a mistake, but you're asking a lot of a number 2 guy to come in, sit behind Eli for a year, maybe 2, and then take over the franchise and guarantee that this is our guy now. With Saquon Barkley, you look at when you set up your draft board, most general managers, most teams go for the best available player. When you look at the best available player on the board in the draft, almost from top to bottom, Saquon Barkley, if he's there, you got to take him. He's almost a guaranteed lock. When you look at trying to grab a quarterback, you're looking at what he's talking about. You're taking a huge risk because you don't really know what you're going to get. You don't really know with any of these guys, but with a running back, you're not really turning your franchise upside down.
The bust rate's so much lower. There are certain positions. The bust rate on running backs taken in the top 10. So, I know Kajana Carter blew out his knee. There are guys that have injuries that kill him. Yeah. But usually, if the talent's there, it will translate. That's a position it translates.
Yeah, I like Greg's perspective, too, because with us being in the league so long, of the top 5 quarterbacks, 3 of them are guaranteed to be bust. So in this science of, oh, man, this guy's ranked this way, this guy's way, man, we've seen it. There ain't no can't miss. All 5 of the top 5 guys, if they go to the wrong place, they're going to have a bad NFL career.
So why doesn't Cleveland take Saquon Barkley?
They might take him with number 4 if they get the opportunity. But Cleveland is absent of a quarterback. And in the last 2 years, we've seen franchise quarterbacks come off the board. So there is real pressure on Cleveland. Also, you have to consider what is the health of Eli Manning. You know, even at his age, what does his body feel like? Eli's been one of the healthiest quarterbacks that we've seen in the NFL in the last 20 years. So that right there, how good is Webb, who they drafted in the 3rd round from Cal? They're with him every day. Gettleman are seeing him throw every day. So they're like, man, we don't know how good they think that he is. And if they think that he is some type of prospect, then you could use a 2nd or another 3rd rounder and bring another quarterback in that room and give Eli another year or 2. So I'm with Gettleman. Like, I'm not under that I have to take a quarterback at this point because I believe Eli still can play. And if I do draft a quarterback, you know what the next question is? If they draft Sam Darnold, the next question is, well, when does he play?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, when's he going to play? Well, what's the time frame? So then you have to answer all those questions. Eli's got to answer those questions. So for me, I think the Giants, the option of not drafting a quarterback is a real thing.
Well, and I think it's very difficult to get true value at number 2 if you are not either taking a franchise quarterback or a guy, as Dave Gettleman has said, is a potential Hall of Famer. He said, when we're drafting at number 2, the guy's got to be a Hall of Fame caliber player at basically any position except quarterback. At quarterback, you can get value if you get Matt Ryan, who's probably not a Hall of Fame caliber player, but the Falcons are thrilled they drafted him where they did in the top 5. Here is the argument for drafting Saquon at number 2 is a very simple one. Look at how many teams last year without elite quarterbacks had top 10 offenses and 10-plus win seasons through the power of their running game. And the Kansas City Chiefs. Alex been no top 10 quarterback, but they found Kareem Hunt. They had a great 1-2 option at running back. And what about the Jacksonville Jaguars? What about the Los Angeles Rams? What about the Dallas Cowboys?
New Orleans Saints.
And now the New Orleans Saints have the great quarterback already, but
that changed their offense.
It completely did.
Changed their offense drastically. I looked this up this morning, and this shocked me. Of the top 10 rushing teams in the league last year, 9 made the playoffs. The only one that didn't is Dallas. And Dallas was alive going into the final week of the year.
And they lost their rusher for 6 games.
Exactly. Of the top 10 passing offenses in football, only 6 made the playoffs. Now, I know there's a little you run when you have a lead late, a little you throw when you're trailing late, a little that's misleading. But top 10 rushing teams: Jacksonville, Dallas, Philly, Carolina, New Orleans, Buffalo, Minnesota, Los Angeles, Kansas City, New England. Including that top 10 is the entirety of the best 7 teams plus Pittsburgh. Like, what he could do for Eli, for Odell, is so valuable.
What it speaks to, like my friend Tom Jackson says, there's 2 things in the NFL that will never go out of style. And that's running the football and playing good defense. So you are right. Those numbers are real. Now, we have all the fantasy, the number, like we like people to throw the ball. But when it comes down to it, can I run the football? Because global warming, I don't know what the definition of, Nick, but the weather changes, all right? It gets cold. And the ability to be able to run the football and to be able to run it late is a constant theme in the NFL.
Greg, does this come down to whether the Giants believe Eli Manning will turn around whatever happened last year? That he's got a year, 2, 3 years left in him?
I don't think it comes down to that. I think it just really comes down to taking the best available prospect. And when you look at it, and you look at what we're talking about right now, the style of running backs that have come out of the draft in the last 3, 4, 5 years, dual-style running backs who aren't just running the football, who are changing the game because of their ability to catch out of the backfield and make it easier on your quarterback when you don't have the pressure or the single option of just throwing down the field. You can check it down to an Ezekiel Elliott or a Hunt and take that pressure
Alvin
Kamara, and take so much pressure off of yourself in the passing game. This is what Saquon Barkley provides. He is a dual threat, healthy. It's hard for me to see a team just passing up Saquon Barkley to try and lock in their quarterback situation when you have a quarterback already locked in. And to your point, Davis Webb.
Eli Manning will have the most confidence he's had in 5 years if they get off the bus and his ex-receiver is Dez Bryant. He has Odell Beckham signed to a long-term contract, and they got Barkley in the backfield. All Shucks Eli will have a bunch of confidence.
Sterling Shepard.
Oh, absolutely, in the slot.
And
yes.
and what you just described right there is not some fanciful pie-in-the-sky scenario. They could sign Dez today if they wanted to, and Saquon will be there at 2. If that's what they want to do, they don't need any dominoes to fall.
Right.
They could have that done by an hour into the draft.
That's a good point. All right, Greg, we'll see you a little bit later on in the show. Coming up, how worried should LeBron and the Cavs be going into Game 3? That's next on First Things First. Welcome back to First Things First. We're now joined by NBA analyst Sarah Kustok. Hey, Sarah.
Good to see you.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
It's been busy for you. You've had a busy week.
I have. Just got back from Cleveland. I head to Indiana tomorrow.
Nice.
You're doing the VR?
It's the VR, so it's TNT's VR virtual reality broadcast.
Dope.
So it's
Which is
been fun. It's been a blast. The people watch wear it.
Yeah.
I was confused. I thought I was going to have to
You're gonna be on the sideline wearing
I
the
get
VR.
it. You're like, it feels real. Take them off because you're there.
Yes. But it's been a blast. It's been
All right, Sarah, let's talk about the Cavs and their upcoming Game 3 tonight.
If Sarah see you out on the street, she ain't gonna say nothing to you. I'm just gonna tell you that,
Someone
people.
wears
She's so
sunglasses.
busy covering LeBron,
Sunglasses
chasing after
everywhere they
LeBron.
go.
I'm chasing after her in Tribeca.
People at home are not sure what that means.
No, but we as a family, we know.
Yes, we know. All right, Sarah, we're going to do a quick pros and cons. Pros, LeBron James has averaged 35 points, 11 rebounds, and over 8 assists in a game. Cons, I've been told I don't have enough time to list all the cons. Sarah, are the Cavs too reliant on LeBron James?
Is there another way to more emphatically say yes?
I mean, right?
It is unbelievable what this man has had to carry and the load that he's had to shoulder. And you look at the fact that the Cavaliers at home lost the first game, of course, in the manner in which they did, but lost Game 2 with LeBron James scoring 46 points, one Game 2 by just 3 points. That was with Victor Oladipo in foul trouble, not playing a lot of time. So, yeah, absolutely. And I think you knew that some of those role players might be question marks, the guys who haven't had playoff experience, but they have not given him anything. And some of the more reliable players like Kyle Korver, who played well. But J.R. Smith, you're looking, is a guy who's a reliable, consistent player, and he, at times, could have been an X factor for this team. I'm concerned about Kevin Love's hand. I know they said that he's going to play in Game 3, but I still think anytime it comes to ligaments, that can be a concern for a player he's done well. He's done some things like rebounding. He's been effective for the Cavs, but he hasn't been scoring either. No. So I'm concerned. I would never bet against LeBron. I am very concerned for this Cavaliers team.
What was going through your mind, because you were at the game, when you see not only do the Pacers nearly come all the way back, but on that last meaningful offensive possession, out of a timeout, not only is Kyle Korver on the court, which I don't understand when it's one defensive possession, but that's the lineup they chose to go with, but they can't execute a simple switch, and Victor Oladipo, the best player on the Indiana Pacers, has a wide open look to tie the game. What's going through your mind right there as he's getting the ball?
You could not have gotten a better look than that. I like the idea they did a small screen. I think that worked well, and it was a good call by Nate McMillan. But the fact that the one guy who you want to take the ball out of his hands
got the ball at the end.
Got the ball in a clear, wide open look.
On the most simple action that exists in the NBA. It wasn't some Brad Stevens special, we're going to run 3 decoy screens, have a guy come. It was the guy with the ball, doesn't even pass the ball, just takes the screen and dribbles exactly to where he wants. To not be able to defend that, LeBron was not focused on his 46 points after the game. He was focused on, he talked to Ali LaForce about that play.
On top of the fact that the Cavs have not been a good defensive team all year, but these are also two, and Kyle Korver, I agree with you, questionable why he's on the floor because he's not one of your better defenders. But these are two guys that have been around the system. They understand how they play. I mean, you got J.R. Smith and Kyle Korver. They should know what they're doing, and to turn around, to leave the ball, I just think that speaks volumes about where this team is at in their dysfunction, their miscommunication, and just guys not knowing where to be on the floor.
Yes, Oladipo said he was shocked that he was open. So I think he missed the shot because he was shocked that he was that open and said he'd love to get that look again. But it's the lack of sense of urgency. And LeBron is playing well, but they got so many players that are playing bad. Jordan Clarkson, George Hill, Kyle Korver. He came back a little bit in game number 2, but Man, he had a horrific death in his family, his younger brother. He also hurt his foot. Tristan Thompson, man, you don't know when you're going to see him again.
No.
Like, I mean, he buried up under the bench.
He's out of the rotation.
Yeah, I think that they would put in Kendrick Perkins, who they have off the G League team before they put him in. So, yes, we're confident in LeBron, but this is the first round. If they do make the NBA Finals, oh, man, LeBron will be exhausted.
Well, he played 44 minutes in that first game.
And the amount of energy he had to spend on the defensive end because he had to take the one-on-one battle.
Oladipo in that game, too.
Right.
So do you have to? What do you do if you're Ty Lue? You have to strike some sort of balance between 100% of the offense goes through LeBron James, and LeBron James is going to have to try to get the rest of his team into some sort of rhythm. How do you balance those two?
And we saw times in the early part of the season them running the offense as well through Kevin Love and him initiating some things off the post. I think the interesting thing, and Nate McMillan is a smart coach, and he's someone who's been around a lot. Years past, it was always turn LeBron into a scorer. We don't want him to have that facilitation ability, also his ability to score, make the other players beat you, but LeBron will get his as long as no one else gets theirs. And that's essentially what Indiana has done.
Yeah.
Said, okay, fine. If LeBron can put up 40 every game, great. But you got two other guys in that game, too, in double figures for the Cavs, other than LeBron. That's not going to win you a series.
Well, I'm going to talk about Kevin Love for a second because he's the only other player on this team that's an all-star. He's the only other player on this team that I think you should be able to rely on game in, game out. He's shooting 33% in the series. He's shooting less than 25% from 2 in this series. Like, can't happen. So Kevin Love, not only can it not happen, it won't repeat itself for the entirety of the series. Now, you're right. He has a partially torn ligament in his thumb on his non-shooting hand. Now, they're saying they're going to be able to tape it up. He should be good to go. We will see how much that affects him. I was worried. I texted Chris the moment it happened. I said I might involve some curse words. I said, did Kevin Love just break his bleeping thumb? Because the way he held his hand, and I mean, if it was a broken bone and he's done for the series, well then, or done for the playoffs, now all of a sudden we have to look at everything else. But Jenna, your concern about could they be overusing LeBron? Like, are they relying on him too much? It is your only option. If you only have one life raft and the ship is sinking, then that life raft, you're not worried about can it get to land? You're just saying let's get on it and see how far we can go. He's their life raft, and it's the best life raft in the NBA. I still believe LeBron and LeBron alone can beat the Indiana Pacers. I know that sounds disrespectful to the Pacers. I promise it's not. It's just out of tremendous respect for him. I think we saw it in Game 2. That LeBron and LeBron alone beat the Indiana Pacers. It was closer than it should have been. And while 46 points we can't expect, could we expect 35 points and 10 assists instead of 46 and 5 assists? I think you can.
But the other guys have to hit those shots, otherwise those aren't going to be assists.
But I will also say I think Indiana did not play well in Game 2.
Oh,
on
absolutely.
Top of Victor
It fell in their
Oladipo.
hands. The foul trouble.
I agree with LeBron being able to carry a team and get wins, but I think Indiana is a very good team. I think they feel like we lost by 3 on the road and did not even play close to our best basketball. Missed a lot of shots that were very makeable shots. And I don't think who puts fear into you other than LeBron. I don't think Oladipo is scared of LeBron, but the rest of that roster on the Cavaliers team, this Indiana team feels like they can absolutely match up with.
Mm-hmm. All right, Sarah, we'll see you a little bit later on in the show. Coming up, why draft one quarterback in the top 5 when you could draft 2 quarterbacks in the top 5? That's next.
Could be coming.
First things first. I'm Jenna Wolf, and thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Make sure to subscribe and tell your friends, family, and coworkers about the podcast, which, by the way, is available on iTunes and all your favorite podcast apps. You can catch a fresh new episode every Monday through Friday on FS1, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern, 3:30 a.m. Pacific. So long, everyone.